As you know, on Sunday night or Monday morning of every week, we post a new expository semiotics explaining why we would choose which lectionary readings. But in these readings, our dream is, and our desire is, to help you read the signs and fondle the details and spot the seminal metaphors, the condensed signs and the stories that are key for preaching to a digital culture. So strap on your seatbelt and join us as we prospect our passages for today. On the liturgical calendar, this is the fourth Sunday after Pentecost. But on the secular calendar, this is Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to all of you. This is the 20th of June, and we have some readings today that have made it very difficult to decide which one to pick for you. The first one is one of my favorite stories, and it's a very, the problem is to get the whole story. We don't know the story. We know the David and Goliath part of it, but it just goes on, and Goliath's from Gath, and after David kills Goliath, he goes and hides out in Gath, and the king of Gath thinks he's now, because Saul's after him, a friend, and so he treats him like a friend, and then David goes off, and he thinks he's killing Saul's army, which is after him, but actually he's killing more Philistines. I mean, it just gets better. And then he goes to Nod, and Nod's king thinks he's also a friend too, and gives him Goliath's sword as a trophy for his warrior status. So anyway, you just can't get a better story than this hardly anywhere. So this is so much fun. So you might want to decide to think about this one. For the semiotics of it, I would think about, you come at me with stone, steel, and spear, and I come at you with one. And David is coming at Goliath with the power of the Spirit and God's presence and favor. And the enemy comes at us with stone, steel, spear. I mean, this is, again, the thinking in threes, and you might want to talk about how the enemy comes at us many times, multiple times at once. Not just one with one thing, but just a surrounding of battery of stone, steel, spear. You get the picture. The psalm here is a great psalm, Psalm 9. The Lord is a stronghold for the oppressed, a stronghold for those in time of trouble. So we're having a series of passages that deal with what do you do in times of trouble, in times of danger. And then the great passage in Job, one of the greatest moments in all of literary history. As every parent, right, has a moment with their child where they say, either they say it out loud or they think it, and they say, "Who do you think you are?" You know, when a 5-year-old is acting like he's a 55-year-old and thinks he's a 55-year-old and is telling you what to do, and you just, in exasperation, you say what? "Who do you think you are?" And this is the "Who do you think you are" passage from the scriptures from Job, as Job is kind of getting a little uppity with God, and then God does this: "Who do you think you are? Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me. You think you're so smart?" I mean, it says here, if you understand, but really it's you think you're so smart. "Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know," dripping with sarcasm. "Who do you think you are? Who stretched the measuring line across it? On what were its footing set? Or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. Who do you think you are? Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the cloud its garment." I could go on and on. You get the picture. Who do you think? I mean, we need to hear this. Who do we think we are? I mean, as we get more and more confident in our godhood, as we now, CRISPR, have you heard about this technology? CRISPR, they can go actually in and do engineering on the genes and change them. You look at genetic engineering, robotics, artificial intelligence, info technology, nanotechnology, I call it grain, and our grainy future. We need to hear God saying to us over and over again, who do you think you are? So a great Job passage, if you wanted to get into that. And then we have Paul in 2 Corinthians 6. And over again, Paul treats his churches as his children. And in Corinthians here, 1st and 2nd both, he really makes it clear, like, I see myself as your father. Now, you have earthly fathers, but you also have fathers in the faith, and I'm one of them. And here in this passage, he actually says, we are not withholding our affection from you. In other words, but you are withholding your affection from me. As a fair exchange, I speak as to my children. Open wide your hearts. All right, this is a father speaking to his children, and of course the churches are his children. A moving passage. There's many kinds of fatherhoods. There's spiritual fathers, genetic fathers, physical fathers, may not be genetic fathers, but the understanding of opening your heart and receiving it, and realizing that, as every father knows, the price of love is a broken heart. That's why I love that little Cupid symbol with the heart with an arrow through it. Yeah, if you're going to love with all your heart, you will get not just one arrow, you'll get many arrows that will pierce that heart, the price of love. Every father knows this, every mother knows this, every parent knows this. The price of love is a broken heart. So if you don't want your heart to break, never love. Because if you love, your heart will break in some way, sometime. But the passage I really want to go with today is one of the storm stories in the Bible. There are a lot of storm stories, and in semiotics you kind of think of things metaphorically and gather them together, and so we have many, many storm stories. This is one of the more famous, although the other one is the walking on the water one with Jesus and with Peter, but there are many storm stories. And this is one of my most favorite ones. I actually collected some essays with some of my students and colleagues from around the world called The Church of the Perfect Storm. And I thought, sure, I had something on this in there, and I got it out, and I can't believe I never addressed this, at least I couldn't find it, this storm story, in that little collection of essays. And I had 3 essays in that collection myself, The Church of the Perfect Storm. But here we go. This is the story of Jesus calming the storm. It's in Luke, which is in a kind of an abbreviated fashion, more stick figure. But here is Mark with a fuller picture of this great storm story. And here we go. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind. Notice they left some things behind. We're going to get into this in a minute. Sometimes you got to get rid of some cargo in the time of a storm. You got to leave some things behind. They took him along just as he was. We have no idea what that meant, but I have no idea what that means. But it suggests that that he could have been with them in a different form. If they'd waited longer, maybe. I think this is kind of just a sanctified imagination here, that he spent the whole day teaching, preaching, and working with his disciples who, he speaks to them in parables, but his disciples aren't exactly getting the parables. So when he's with them privately, he goes off and he says, okay, this is what I'm really talking about here. This is what this really means. But it also means this. And so he's having huge amounts of energy expended dealing with the crowds that are humongous. But then he's got to get back, and because the disciples are going, okay, Jesus, what in the world are you talking about? So he's got the one and the other. I mean, I got in a little Twitter fight with somebody, and you know the name, so I'm going to tell you. But the tweet was, the worst thing a preacher can do is to be unclear. You can be uncertain, but you can never be unclear. And I just tweeted back, yeah, that's so Jesus. Because after every Jesus communication, the disciples looked at one another. Everybody said, well, that's the clearest thing we've ever heard. Now we get it with cut glass clarity. That is just... No, they looked at one another and said, did you get that? What do you think he meant by that? See, Jesus communicates for something more than clarity. It's conversation. He wants to continue the conversation. It's participation. It's counsel. It's collaboration. So, anyway, I think he's exhausted. He's blasted. He's just totally worn out. And they kind of help him into the boat here, just as he was, it says. And there were also other boats with him. So he can't even escape the crowds on the water. He's followed by, like the whales out here. They wherever they go, other boats are always with them. You know when a whale's around, because they got all these whale watching boats. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern. Now here's the key thing. Sleeping on a pillow. All right? Some translations have cushion. All right? But this is huge. If you don't get this little bit of detail, you're missing the whole story. Meaning, Jesus is sleeping on a cushion or a pillow, meaning when do you sleep on a pillow? If you're just taking a nap, you don't get out the cushions and the pillows. You just lean your head back. But Jesus is exhausted. And so the pillow in this story is a way of telling us Jesus put a do not disturb sign on him. He just said, okay, I need to get a couple hours of sleep here, so don't bother me. You can handle it. Don't disturb me. He's sleeping, his head is on a pillow, and Jesus in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" "Master, the tempest is raging." He got up, rebuked the wind and the waves, and said to the waves, "Quiet, peace, be still." And the wind died down and was completely calm. He then said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Oh, you of little faith." They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Now let's put this in context here. First thing in the story. And all these storm stories are how are you going to survive storms in life? You're going to have storms in life. Nobody gets through life without going through storms. You got, little drizzles. I mean, Seattle's known for, everybody thinks Seattle rains a lot. No, it drizzles all the time. I mean, Atlanta, Miami get about the same amount of rain as Seattle. What's the difference? Well, Seattle, it takes 2 weeks to get 2 inches of rain. In Miami or Atlanta, you have gully washers. I mean, you have thunderstorms that pow, they come down. Not here. It's just drizzle, 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 drizzle. So you get drizzles, but then you get these gully washers, these huge clapping thunderstorms that you get soaked in, and then you have, on top of those kinds of storms, you have, rainstorms that are heavy. You have heavy rainstorms that some might call tornadoes. You have some rain that turns to ice. You get ice storms where you're slipping around. You can't find any firm footing anywhere. And then maybe the most dangerous and damaging of all are the hurricanes. And every life has hurricanes. So we could categorize each one of these just to get a kind of the storms of life. And that could be your whole sermon. And I remember Teresa Fry Brown has a marvelous sermon on the storms of life like this. H. Beecher Hicks has an incredible book on preaching through a storm that tells about the story of his pastoring in Washington, D.C., and how he preached through the storms that came to him. So you've got some other resources out there that you can use to build this up. But this is a story that tells us, as disciples of Jesus, how to navigate these storms of life. Now, this is not in the story, but there clearly You don't navigate it by complaining about the storm or complaining about the weather, whimpering, whining, wringing your hands about how awful it is. There are people that this is all they can do. I mean, they're chronic complainers. They're also called fire hosers. They just squirt you with negativity about everything. And Jesus is not encouraging. There's nothing in the story that encourages that when we come into a storm, no matter what degree it is, no matter what kind it is, whether it's a stress storm or a disease storm, a divorce or whatever, we just complain about it all the time. Just can't stop talking about it. Deal with it. Deal with it. This cottage here is about 50 feet from the ocean. All right, and we had some people that rented this cottage, and they came knocking at the door of my house, and it was low tide, and so they came and they were knocking at the door and said, "Well, we're having a little problem. We're not sure we can keep staying here." And I said, "Well, what's the problem?" They said, "Well, down there it just smells so fishy. It's just all this fish smell down there. It just smells." Well, it is the ocean. I mean, I'm sorry that you're so close to the ocean and low tide just happened to. You could go down there and walk. It would smell even more. But there's chronic. You can't please nothing. It's nothing is right. That's not what Jesus wants for his followers. And then there's some who say, well, we got a storm, so therefore we got to put life on hold until it passes. Just hunker down and huddle away. No, Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble, storms. But it came to pass. So you don't wait until it passes, you just go through the storm. If you put your life on hold waiting for a storm to pass, you can spend your whole life on hold, because all of life, I mean, you hope you trade up your problems, but you're going to have problems in life, and all of life you will have a problem. It's just a different problem. I know how I'm going to get through a storm. I'm going to learn crisis management and risk assessment and strategic planning. Good luck with that one. Try to manage a roller coaster ride. Yeah, good luck with that one, but we will try it anyway. So here's the first thing. Here's how you navigate a storm according to this story. It's right here. He said to his disciples, "Go over to the other side." In other words, you ready? Lift anchor and put out into the deep. Lift anchor and put out, let's go over to the other side. Let's lift anchor and go. We think where it's safest is on the shore. The shore is not safer than the sea in time of storm, especially in time of storm. Where's the most dangerous place for a boat to be in the midst of a storm? Hugging harbors. That's where it gets smashed to smithereens. And a lot of the church today is getting smashed to smithereens. A lot of Christians are, because they want to play it safe. They want to hug harbors. They want to hunker down. Harbor leaves the church in the lurch. So you got to leave harbor and stop playing it safe. Playing it safe is unsafe. The root metaphor of forgive. Remember, every word has a backstory, and every backstory has a root metaphor. The root metaphor of forgive is let go, stop harboring. Let go, actually cease to harbor. What are you harboring that is keeping you in harbor? What in your life are you holding to yourself, not forgiving, not releasing? Just let go. Lift the anchor and go out into the deep. It's not that the sea isn't dangerous. I mean, fishermen, if you go to some fishing villages around the world, especially Europe and the Scandinavian countries, those fishing villages, when fishermen live by the shore, many times, this is really interesting, they have the back of the house to the water, because the water is chaos, it's danger, and all this stuff. And so they want to while they're at home, they want to put their back to it and just face inland, face inward to the greenery, the gardens, the green commons, and all that kind of stuff. But peace is, you can find peace facing inward, but the deepest peace, the peace that Christ gives, is the peace that comes from facing outward. When Jesus appeared to his disciples who were sitting Shiva after his resurrection, first thing he says to them is, peace be unto you, and he shows them his hands and his side. The ultimate peace, the peace that passes all understanding, is the peace of going into the storm, facing and outfacing the storm, and being obedient in that storm, even obedient unto suffering and death. So, lift anchor, go out into the deep. Faith isn't harbor hugging. In some ways, faith is bungee jumping. You are trusting God to hold that rope. Pastors, you are not harbor pilots. Pastors, you are deep sea captains. Lift anchor, launch into the deep. Number 2, tack into the wind. You don't steer directly into the wind, but tack into the wind. You can't outrun the storm. I love the last stanza of Isaac Watts's 1724 hymn, Am I a Soldier of the Cross? But the last stanza, in a variant version, was actually written by John Newton, and it goes like this, who was a sea captain. Shall I be wafting to the sky on flowery beds of ease, while others strive to win the prize and sail on bloody seas? God has called us to sail on the seas, to turn our face toward Jesus, to turn our face toward the future. To follow Jesus is to face the future, is to steer into the wind. It is to outface the future. Jesus is already ahead of us in the future. So keep tacking towards Jesus, who is in the beyond the storm. Jesus set his face toward Jerusalem. He steered into the storm. He tacked into the wind. So, when we talk about Jesus ascending into heaven, we think of it in terms of space, but we need to think of it in terms of time as well. Jesus ascended into the future. Number 3, get rid of excess cargo. Toss heavy burdens overboard. The Wall Street Journal this week had a cover to its catalog where it had a swing over the water. And the theme of it was the swing of things. Well, a long time ago, I used the swing as a mission statement for me, a mission metaphor, because I'm trained as a historical theologian where I want you to lean back, but at the same time, you lean back, not to keep going back and stay back, but you lean back to kick into the future. And this is called parabolic harmonious oscillation. This double movement, you do two things at the exact same time, lean back, kick forward, is exactly what, but as you lean back, you know what things you got to get rid of. You can't keep this and keep kicking to the future. So you got to, this swing, this periodic swing. As you steer, you also swing and you get rid of some stuff. I mean, roots are huge. It's all about roots, but you can get so rooted that you can get root bound, I think it's called, where it's just like a ball of roots, and no water can get there, no nutrients can get there, and root bound will kill a plant. So in many places the church needs to grow roots, but in some places we are so root bound. We got rid of some cargo. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go so you can kick forward. Number 4, and this actually used to happen when the storm was so bad, so severe, that the sea captain, the captain of the vessel, worried that he, in steering that boat, might be swept overboard. he had his sailors lash him to the mast. And he instructed them, no matter what comes, even if I tell you to unleash me, don't do it. And you keep me lashed to the mast so I can be up there, I can see where we're going, and it's going to be scary. It's going to be the scariest thing of my life, but you lash me to the mast. And part of what we're seeing here is, can we lash ourselves in times of storm, tighter than ever, to the mast of the Master? We are called to sometimes just trust the Spirit to guide us and guard us through these storms. And the only way to do it is to lash ourselves to the mast of the Master. Sailors, throughout history, in English, it's one way, but actually the original one was Basta, the Spanish, who were known for their sailing fleets. And a lot of Columbus sailors on his journeys had done this. You tattoo to your forefingers the phrase, Ya Basta. And when a storm came up, they would put it together. Today it's hold fast. And sailors, you still see, you can Google this, you have all these tattoos for your fingers, hold fast, and all sorts of designs. But you put your fingers like this, and you would kind of bless each other as the storm was coming, and you'd say, hold fast. Or when it really looked scary, and you would see one another, and you go like this, and it replaced a handshake. Hold fast. Steady as she goes. Steady as she goes. And this is what it means to lash ourselves to the mast of the Master. It doesn't mean to stay on course. It means to be steady in whatever course the captain is telling you to go, and whatever course he's charting. And of course, he's improv. I mean, the storm, you can't strategic plan a storm. You're improving a storm. When praying, early Christians faced these. But starting in the 4th and 5th century, they began to stop facing east and facing across. Facing east, the return of Christ, where Christ would be coming from the future. But that cross became the compass. As they faced the cross became in their mind a compass by which they set their direction for life. Only from the cross can we see life. Only from the cross can we get our compass for life. And when the world is tying itself in knots, tie yourself to the mast of the Master. Cleave to the cross. Cleave not to the piers and pillars, not to the points and propositions, but cleave to Christ. Lash yourself to Jesus. May there be no light between you in a time of storm. Cling to the old rugged cross. Lash yourself tight. We are not captains of our own ship, no matter what the song says. Cling to the true captain. Jesus, Savior, pilot me. The more we hold to him, the more we realize ultimately he's really holding to us. And he will take us through that storm. Now the last thing, the fifth thing in navigating a storm is enjoy the ride. Now this is what happened. This is the whole point of this story almost. I mean, it has elements of all these in it, but this is the big one, all right? So Jesus gets with his disciples. He's down at the stern of the boat, the back of the boat, sleeping. And the storm comes up, and the disciples go, wow, this is a good storm. And they go, whoa, this is a really big storm. And then they go, we're going to die. We're going to die. We're going to die. Well, what do they got to do? Well, they got to wake up Jesus. So they go wake him up, even though he's got this do not disturb sign on him, which is that pillow. So say, Master, don't you care that we're perishing? Wake up, we're going to die. So Jesus doesn't say a thing. He just gets up from sleeping, a deep sleep, and goes over. I'm sure he's, and just speaks. The first time he demonstrates to his disciples mastery over nature. Peace. Be still. Now, you and I are disciples. We're looking there. We're going, oh, are you kidding? Can you believe this? I don't know about you, but I'm going, boy, did I pick the right guy to follow, This is we hit the jackpot here. We're high-fiving each other. Look, we're the first ones to know we can do this. What an incredible privilege. What an incredible blessing. What a thrill. We saw Jesus calm the storm and speak peace and everything and got peaceful. And Jesus turns around and says, congratulations, you've just seen some of my best work and you're the first ones to know what I can do. Oh. He turns around. He goes, oh, you have little faith. What? Don't you trust me? Don't you believe me? I mean, I'm in the boat with you. You and I, we're together. What harm can come to you when you're in the boat with me? We're sharing this life together. And no, I am not going to speak peace to every storm in your life. I'm not going to say to every storm in your life, calm, be still. No, but you could have ridden those waves with me, knowing that if you're in the boat with Jesus, what harm can come to you? Even if the worst happens and we go down, you're still with me. I'm not going to bring peace to every storm, but I'll give you peace through every storm. I'm not going to say, be still to every storm that comes to your life, but I'll give you that stillness of the one piece of being in the boat with me and knowing that if you and I share our life together, you could have had the first roller coaster ride in history. You could have had the time of your life riding these waves, the thrill of an epic ride. Instead, you settle for the cheap thrill, the cheap blessing. Oh, you have little faith. Sisters and brothers, how do you navigate a storm? You got it right here. One story. Tells it all. But it ends with, remember? Enjoy the ride. God put us here to enjoy the ride, even the worst storms. If you're in the boat with Jesus, what harm can come to you? Enjoy the ride. Semiotics is the art of angling, of turning things askew, upside down, inside out, cattywampus, sunny side up, over easy, scrambled, hard-boiled. We hope you enjoyed today's journey, but always remember, it's more important you prepare the preacher than you prepare the sermon.